You know, it seems like we live in an age mostly defined by nostalgia. Just look at the legions of franchises that are being revived, rebooted, or remade, and tell me I'm wrong. Granted, as much as we like to complain about the lack of originality, it can sometimes lead to good things. For instance, the Fargo series has actually managed to rival the movie.
You're a shit cop, you know that, right?
Hannibal is one of the most darkly engrossing shows I've ever seen.
Family values may have declined over the last century, but we still help our families when we can. Your family will.
And Mad Max Fury Road was, well, Mad Max Fury Road.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Yeah. Admittedly, though, I was less than enthusiastic about the prospect of a new Star Wars trilogy. I thought that Return of the Jedi capped it off fairly well, and I wasn't really interested to see where the story could go from there. If I changed my mind, I could always look at something from the expanded universe.
Oh, come on. You knew that Disney wasn't gonna let that fly.
What are you doing?
I'm doing the review with you.
Why?
Because I want to.
Oh, you're still sore about them retconning The Force Unleashed, aren't you?
Well, yeah, but only because it was the perfect start to the Rebel Alliance.
So you want to see how this new Star Wars content stacks up against the old stuff?
Yeah, that's the gist.
Alright, let's get started. This is Star Wars The Force Awakens. The movie opens several years after Episode 6. The Rebellion has become the Resistance, and the remnants of the Empire have been reorganized into the First Order.
Wait, where are Luke Skywalker and the Jedi?
Oh, well, Luke is missing because...
Spoilers!
Yeah. Instead, we have Kylo Ren, a mysterious Darth Vader-esque figure leading the forces of the First Order in an effort to crush the Resistance.
Question. Since the Empire was presumably scattered at the end of Episode 6, how is it that they're still winning?
Well, that's how it was in the original trilogy, so the filmmakers were obviously trying to emulate that. It's not the only thing that they carry over, as you'll soon see. We're reintroduced to a galaxy far, far away through the eyes of two new characters. Rey, a scavenger from a desert planet, and Finn, a former stormtrooper looking to escape the horrors of war. These two are soon thrust into a perilous adventure when they stumble upon a droid named BB-8, who is carrying a secret map to Luke Skywalker's location. Coming across colorful characters both old and new, these unlikely allies must get this information to the Resistance before the First Order closes in.
This is sounding pretty familiar.
And that's actually one of the biggest issues. This movie is very derivative of the 1977 film, to the point where you could almost call it a remake. I think that in trying to capture the feel of the older Star Wars flicks, the filmmakers played it way too safe with the story.
I feel like that was the intent, though. Maybe they were trying to appeal to the fans. After all, why should I trust you with something I love when you haven't shown that you know and also love it?
Yeah, but why continue the series if you're not going to do anything new with it?
In my opinion, this movie was more of a stepping stone for things to come. It was meant to recreate the feel of Star Wars more than continue it. It was a way of proving to us that the saga is in safe hands with J.J. Abrams.
Well, personally, I would have been more satisfied if the plot had taken more risks.
As would I, but surely there must be something in the script that you like.
Oh, there's plenty here that I like, such as the characters. Most of the main players are pretty well defined and fairly appealing. Daisy Ridley lends an engaging fortitude and vulnerability to Rey. John Boyega's naivete is reasonably amusing, and Oscar Isaac brings an upbeat wittiness to Poe Dameron.
Personally, I feel like Finn was more interesting than Rey, but to each his own, I suppose. I also think that Harrison Ford was pretty good here in a returning role. He's much more awake than he's been recently, that's for sure, coming across as a more experienced version of Han Solo. At the same time, he maintains the roguish aspects that made the character so endearing in the first place.
Well, he's about as limited as he always is, but he did seem to have enough coffee to avoid falling asleep. If only Carrie Fisher left the same positive impression.
Oh, come on, she wasn't that bad.
No, she did an admirable job, considering she couldn't move any part of her face.
Now that is just mean. And in poor taste.
Yeah, you're right, I apologize. After all, she wasn't anywhere near as bad as the villain.
What?
Kylo Ren sucks. He's laughably petulant, flying into childish tantrums when he doesn't get his way. He's embarrassingly weak, to the point where it's difficult to take him seriously as a threat. And his repeated attempts to emulate Darth Vader just come across as a kid playing dress-up. Granted, part of that has to do with the writing, but Adam Driver's whiny performance and lack of presence don't really help. Do you know why Darth Vader didn't take his helmet off in the original movie? It's because it would have diminished his impact as a villain.
Alright, in my opinion, Kylo Ren is meant to be a more well-rounded character than Darth Vader initially was. Vader was kind of one-note until episode 6, to be completely honest, but with Kylo Ren, we're supposed to feel sorry for him. He's not diabolical, he's just conflicted and misguided.
Look, you can feel empathy for a villain while still fearing him. Just look at Khan in Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, Mr. Freeze in Batman the Animated Series, or Wilson Fisk in the Daredevil Netflix show. Sure, we pitied these guys, but this never caused them to lose their sense of menace. It's what made them simultaneously fascinating and frightening. Kylo Ren is neither of these. How am I supposed to be afraid of him in the films to come? There are villains in the Star Wars animated shows that are both more interesting and more intimidating than this guy.
Ben!
I just had sex. I'm about to eat nachos! It's the greatest moment of my life! Unless you screw it up with whatever it is you're about to say.
Well, I thought that the element of tragedy really worked for him. At least he had more depth than Supreme Leader Snoke.
See, I actually liked him.
Why? He's so boring.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Subtlety has never been in the repertoire for Star Wars bad guys. So the way I see it, if you're gonna go with an over-the-top design, then at least make it look cool, which is what they did.
Okay, the design is one thing, the character is another. This is what I don't like about reusing elements from the first trilogy. What made the Emperor interesting was that he was even more powerful and manipulative than Darth Vader. Supreme Leader Snoke seems like a poor attempt to recreate that when, in reality, it would have been more effective if Kylo Ren was the big guy in charge. Maybe it would have been better if they waited to introduce Snoke until the second film, with Kylo Ren seeking him out to further his understanding of the dark side.
Well, regardless what you think of the character, you can't fault Andy Serkis for once again knocking it out of the park in the world of performance capture. Come to think of it, from a technical standpoint, this film excels in numerous areas. The CGI is richly detailed and blends nicely into the plethora of practical effects. In addition, the sets and locations look appropriately exotic and picturesque.
The movie is also full of energy, and much of that has to do with J.J. Abrams. In a lot of ways, it's similar to what he did with Star Trek. The kinetic style works well for a modern interpretation of the universe.
I agree. In terms of the cinematography and how the scenes are staged, there's never a dull moment. In conjunction, the great John Williams delivers another dynamic and hard-hitting score, even though it's not quite as memorable as his previous Star Wars themes. You're musically adept. What did you think?
I didn't dislike it, but you're right in that it didn't match the music from the other movies. None of the selections really stood out to me. At its worst, it was kind of generic. So I was a little disappointed from that perspective, but I still enjoyed the movie overall. If I had to sum up my final thoughts, it's a good start. It's a well-made, faithful continuation that maintains a lot of what made the series great in the first place. However, I would highly suggest seeing the other ones first. How about you?
In the end, Star Wars The Force Awakens suffers from a recycled story that never quite justifies its significance in the saga, but it makes up for this with relatable characters, convincing special effects, impressive production values, and energetic direction from a man who clearly respects the material that he's working with. Thanks for watching. Thank you for your help, uninvited though it was.
Hey, anytime, bro.
Feel free to like, subscribe, and/or comment. Until next time.